The bridge had been there longer than most of the town. Old pine planks, weather silver and groaning under weight, spanned the black water like a scar. Deputy Caleb Rourke had crossed it 1,000 times without thinking, until tonight. His K9, Bear, stopped dead at the first board, hackles raised, teeth bared at something beneath them. The wind carried the faint reek of rot, cutting to the damp river smell. Caleb crouched, listening. Under the creak of the boards came another sound, faint, wet, rhythmic. Bear's low growl deepened, and Caleb's stomach dropped. Something was down there, and it wasn't just the river. If you like dark, slow-burn mysteries with moments that stick in your chest long after, stay with me. This one will take you somewhere you won't want to go. But you'll remember. The wind off the river had a way of stealing warmth from the skin, pulling it into the current below. Caleb tightened his jacket collar with one hand, the other gripping Bear's leash as the shepherd stood rigid, front paw suspended mid-step. The old dog's amber eyes were locked on the dark gap between the bridge planks. "Come on, buddy," Caleb muttered, giving a gentle tug. Bear didn't move. His muscles were tight under his black and tan coat, nose wrinkled in a silent snarl. Caleb squatted, pressing his ear closer to the wood. The bridge complained with soft, uneasy groans. Beneath that, faint, almost lost in the swirl of water, was a tap, 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 too even to be driftwood, too deliberate. The moon slipped free from a cloud, throwing silver across the water. It made the gaps between the planks look like missing teeth in a grin. Caleb swallowed. "You're making me look jumpy," he whispered to Bear, but his voice lacked conviction. By morning, the frost had turned the grass brittle white. Caleb's coffee steamed against the cold as he leaned on the hood of his cruiser. Sheriff Eloise Carter stepped out from the station, pulling her hat low over her eyes. "Heard you and Bear got spooked on Westbridge last night," she said. "Not spooked," Caleb replied. Bear didn't want to cross. Kept staring under the boards. "There's something tied there." The sheriff squinted at him like she was deciding whether he was being a deputy or a storyteller. "River's high this week. Probably a log." "Logs don't smell like that," Caleb said, setting his cup down. "And they don't make tapping sounds." She sighed, glancing toward the low rise that hid the bridge from town. "We got budget talks at 10. Check it out after. If it's something worth pulling out, we'll call in Public Works." The bridge sat a mile out, the kind of place teenagers dare each other to run across at night. The river was narrow here, but deep, with banks choked by black willow. Caleb parked the cruiser just before the tree-lean. Bear hopped out, nose already working the cold air. The moment they reached the first plank, Bear froze again. Caleb crouched, pulled a flashlight from his belt, and angled the beam into the shadows below. Something pale swayed with the current, a shape too still for an animal, too narrow for driftwood. A rope, frayed but taut, disappeared into the murk. The tapping was louder now, rhythmic with the movement of the current. Caleb leaned farther over, careful not to put weight on the loose plank, and the light caught on fabric. Not just any fabric, canvas, the kind used for duffel bags or old tarps. And beneath it, in a split-second flash through the water, he saw something round, waxen, and unmistakable. A human face. By noon, the bridge was sealed off. Sheriff Carter stood beside him, jaw tight. "You sure about what you saw?" she asked. "I know what I saw." "Could be a mannequin," she said, but her voice lacked any real belief. The dive team from the next county over-arrived in a dented van. 2 men in dry suits eased into the current, their movements slow and deliberate. It took 20 minutes to cut the rope and haul the bundle to shore. When the tarp was pulled back, every sound on the riverbank died. The woman was maybe in her 30s, skin pale as the frost, hair fanned in dark ropes across her shoulders. Her eyes were open, her lips were blue. She'd been tied to a length of rebar, her wrists bound with clothesline. The coroner arrived, his breath showing the cold as he knelt beside her. "Couple days in the water," he murmured. "Maybe 3. Caleb glanced at Bear, who sat silently at his side. The dog's gaze didn't leave the woman's face. Sheriff Carter straightened. "No ID?" "Nothing on her," the coroner replied. Caleb crouched, his eyes tracing a faint line around her wrist, lighter skin, like a watch had been worn there for years. Somebody knew how to hide her, he said. Somebody wanted her found. Carter corrected. That night, Caleb couldn't shake the sound of the tapping under the bridge. It came to him in dreams, turning into a knocking on his own front door. When he opened it, the woman from the river stood there, dripping, her lips parting as if to speak. A crash in the kitchen woke him. Bear stood by the back door, growling low. Outside, under the moon, the frost on his lawn bore the imprint of boots leading away toward the tree-line. Morning brought more than just the frost. Sheriff Carter called him in. "You're not going to like this," she said, handing him a folder. Inside was a photo of the woman from the river, alive, smiling faintly, seated at a bar. "She's local?" Caleb asked. "Not exactly. Name's Laura Sutter. Stayed here a few months back at the Redwood Motel. She vanished after a fight with her boyfriend. No report filed." Caleb frowned. Who was the boyfriend? The sheriff's eyes flicked to his before she spoke. Eddie Barnes. Caleb's stomach tightened. Eddie wasn't just anyone. He was Caleb's oldest friend, a man who'd pull him out of trouble more than once. That night, Caleb sat in his truck outside Eddie's workshop. Through the dusty window, Eddie moved between benches cluttered with tools, his motions stiff. When Eddie finally came out, wiping his hands on a rag, his eyes went to Bear first, then Caleb. "Heard you found somebody under the bridge," Eddie said, voice flat. "Yeah, Laura Sutter." Eddie froze, just long enough for Caleb to see it. Didn't know her that well. Sheriff says otherwise. Eddie's gaze hardened. "You here as a friend or a cop?" "Guess that depends," Caleb said quietly. Eddie stepped closer, close enough for Caleb to smell the tang of metal and oil on him. "Be careful, Caleb. Some things in this town don't get dug up for a reason." Later, at home, Caleb found an envelope wedged under his door. Inside was a single Polaroid. Laura Sutter again, this time sitting at the very edge of the West Bridge, a cigarette in her hand, and behind her, blurred but visible, was Eddie Barnes. The note on the back was written in shaky block letters. She wasn't the first. The note sat on Caleb's kitchen table, edges curling in the damp morning air. He'd read it 5 times, each pass making the words feel heavier. She wasn't the first. Bear lay nearby, head resting on his paws, eyes tracking Caleb like he knew his handler's mind was running too fast. Caleb slid the Polaroid back into the envelope and locked it in the drawer beside his service weapon. Whatever this was, it was more than Laura Sutter. The sheriff's office smelled like burnt coffee and old wood when he walked in. Sheriff Carter was leaning over the map table, a cigarette smoldering in the ashtray beside her. She wasn't supposed to smoke inside. No one was. But Carter did what she wanted. "You've been busy," she said without looking up. "I got a note," Caleb told her. Her head came up slowly. "From who?" "No name. Polaroid of Laura on the bridge. Eddie's in the background. And a message says she wasn't the first." The sheriff tapped ash into a chipped mug. "That's not something you sit on, deputy." "I'm not sitting on it. I'm telling you now." Her mouth pulled tight, not quite a frown, not quite a smile. "You going to be able to do your job if Eddie's tied up in this?" Caleb looked her dead in the eye. "If he's guilty, I'll put him in the ground myself." By mid-afternoon, they had a search warrant. Eddie wasn't home when Caleb and 2 deputies rolled up to the workshop, but the place wasn't locked. Inside, the air was thick with grease, sawdust, and something faintly sour. Caleb moved slowly between workbenches, scanning for anything out of place. Bear padded beside him, nose twitching. It was Bear who found it. His sudden bark echoing off the tin walls, paws planted in front of a locked metal cabinet in the corner. "Get me a crowbar," Caleb called to one of the deputies. The lock gave way with a screech. Inside was a plastic storage bin. Caleb pulled the lid off and the smell hit him, wet earth and rot. Inside were 3 women's handbags, each caked in dried mud. One had a driver's license still inside, Clara Voss, missing since 2019. Sheriff Carter swore under her breath when she saw. "Jesus, Eddie." The other 2 bags had no ID, just scraps, lipstick, a cracked compact mirror, a broken phone with a spiderweb screen. "We're calling state police," Carter said. "This just went from a body under the bridge to a serial case." Caleb stared at the bags. Each one felt like a stone in his gut. Eddie had been at his wedding. He'd been there when Caleb's father died. And now, they found Eddie at Rusty's Tavern just after sundown. He didn't run, didn't fight. Just looked at Caleb like he'd been expecting it. "You think you know what's going on," Eddie said as the cuffs clicked around his wrists. "But you don't." "Then tell me," Caleb said. Eddie's gaze shifted toward the sheriff, then back to Caleb. Not here, not in front of her. Back at the station. They put Eddie in interview, too. The tape recorder's red light blinked. "3 handbags in your shop," Carter said. "One belongs to Clara Voss. She disappeared 3 years ago." Eddie leaned back, chains rattling at his wrists. "You think I killed them? You tell me why I shouldn't." Carter shot back. He looked at Caleb instead. "You remember that fire on Dock Road? 6 years ago." Caleb frowned. "Yeah, warehouse went up. Everyone said it was an accident." "It wasn't," Eddie said. "And the man who lit it, he's the same one who put those women in the river. You've been shaking his hand at the Founders Day barbecue every year." Caleb felt a slow, cold drip in his stomach. "You're talking about Mayor Dwyer." Eddie didn't blink. "And he'll kill me if I talk. Might kill you, too." That night, Caleb sat in his truck outside his own house, engine off, watching the lights in his kitchen window. He didn't go in. The boots he'd seen in the frost 2 nights ago. He couldn't shake the feeling they belonged to someone who wanted him rattled. Bear shifted in the passenger seat, restless. Caleb reached over, scratched behind his ears, and said quietly, "We're in it now, boy." The next morning, Sheriff Carter called him in early. Eddie was gone. "What do you mean gone?" Caleb demanded. "Door lock's fine. No sign of a break. Camera in the hall stopped working around 2 a.m. Caleb's voice was low. Somebody walked him out. Carter met his eyes. "If Dwyer's in this, we're going to need proof. Real proof." Caleb thought of the note in his drawer. She wasn't the first. If the mayor was tied to Laura Sutter's death and Clara Voss's, then that meant the river had more secrets. By dusk, he was back at the bridge. The planks creaked under his boots as he moved to the center. Bear whined, ears back, but followed. Caleb crouched, pulling out his flashlight, and aimed it into the water. Something caught the light. A second rope, farther downstream, just under the surface. It looked newer than the one that had held Laura. The current rocked whatever held, and for a moment, Caleb swore he saw the pale curve of another face. The tapping was back, louder this time. Not wood against wood, metal striking metal, steady, as if calling him closer. He straightened slowly, scanning the bank. That's when he saw a shadow move against the tree-line. Too tall to be a deer, too still to be a trick of light. The shadow didn't leave. It just stood there, watching. The figure at the tree-line didn't move, even when Caleb called out, "Who's there?" The only answer was the hiss of the river and Bear's low, steady growl. Caleb took one step toward the bank, his boots thudding on the planks. The shadow melted back into the trees. He didn't chase. Whoever it was wanted him off the bridge, and he wasn't giving them that. Instead, he clipped Bear's leash to the railing, dropped flat on his stomach, and leaned over with the flashlight again. The rope below was pale, almost new, knotted around something long and narrow. He unhooked the portable hook pole from his belt, reached down between the gaps and planks, and snagged the rope. The moment he pulled, the tapping stopped. It took half an hour to haul the thing onto the bank. His gloves were soaked through, fingers numb, but he kept pulling until the shape emerged from the black water. It wasn't a body. It was a metal locker. Old, the paint flaking, the kind used in a factory or a shipyard. Someone had looped the rope through its handle and filled it with bricks. Caleb knelt beside it, catching his breath, Bear standing close enough that his fur brushed Caleb's arm. The padlock was rusted, but not unbreakable. He smashed it open with the back of his hatchet. Inside were files, water-warped but still legible. Invoices, shipping manifests, police reports. And every one of them linked Mayor Frank Dwyer to a list of names, most with red XS drawn over them. The last name had no X. Caleb Rourke. By the time he got back to the station, Carter was pacing her office, phone to her ear. She hung up when she saw the locker. Where the hell did you find that? Caleb told her, keeping his voice low. She flipped through the files, her frown deepening with each page. This is enough to put him away for life, she said. Only if we live long enough to hand it to a judge, Caleb replied. That night, the rain came hard, drumming on the roof of Caleb's truck as he drove toward Dwyer's estate. The bridge was slick under the tires, the river raging below. He parked in the shadows and left Bear in the cab, telling him to stay. The dog didn't like it. He never did. But Caleb wasn't risking him in what came next. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the house smelled faintly of cigars and lemon oil. He found Dwyer in his study, a glass of whiskey in hand, like he'd been expecting company. You've been busy, deputy, the mayor said. Looks like you have two, Caleb answered, tossing one of the files onto the desk. Dwyer didn't even glance at it. Do you think anyone will believe you over me? The sheriff's in my pocket. Always has been. Caleb froze. Carter? She's been cleaning up my messes for years, Dwyer said with a smile. Laura was her problem. Eddie took the fall until he didn't. You were never supposed to get this far. The study door clicked shut behind him. Caleb turned just enough to see Carter step into light, her service weapon already raised. Put the files down, Caleb, she said quietly. He looked at her, then at Dwyer. How many? Her jaw tightened. Too many. You left Eddie in his cell that night, Caleb said, but you made it look like he walked out. She didn't deny it. Dwyer swirled the ice in his glass. You could walk away, Caleb. Forget the bridge. Forget the river. Caleb thought of Laura's open eyes under the tarp, of Clara Voss's cracked mirror, of the Polaroid with those 4 words. She wasn't the first. No, Caleb said. The first shot was Carter's. It hit the edge of the desk, splintering wood. Caleb dove sideways, grabbing the heavy floor lamp and swinging it hard into Dwyer's shoulder. The mayor went down with a grunt. Carter moved fast, but Bear moved faster. The shepherd hit the study door like a bullet, teeth closing on Carter's arm, dragging her off balance. Caleb wrenched the gun from her hand, tossing it across the room. You're done, he said, breathing hard. By dawn, state police had Dwyer and Carter in custody. The files from the locker were in evidence. Eddie was found in an abandoned mill outside town, beaten but alive. He wouldn't talk much, just told Caleb, "Your lucky Bear's on your side." A week later, Caleb stood on the West Bridge alone. The planks were damp under his boots, the river calmer now, almost quiet. He leaned on the railing, listening. No tapping, no smell of rot, just the water moving on, as it always had. Bear sat beside him, tail sweeping the boards, eyes on the black current. "You were right, buddy," Caleb murmured. "You were right all along." They stayed there a while, letting the cold wind wash over them, the town behind them still asleep. Caleb knew the river would hold its secrets again, but for once the bridge felt lighter beneath his feet.